Okay. Good morning.
Morning, everyone. If we could, as you join, could you type your name and affiliation into the chat, please, so that we can have a running record. Also, as you come on, we are recording. If anybody has an issue with us recording, please let me know. But we are doing that. Morning, Lydia.
Good morning. Cleaning my glasses.
And you have to do that every once in a while, or the world gets really foggy.
I spent my whole life without glasses and I just cannot stand it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I hear you, Lydia.
Sad life, right?
It's the worst. It's one thing if you're used to it, but I cannot adjust.
It's just impossible. And it's always something on there. I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's sad.
Well, I'm gonna do a study of what is on Lydia's glasses.
I'm not sure you want to know.
You may not want to know.
Well, no. So I've been really intrigued lately by these really high-powered microscopes, and where they can zoom in and look at all the little creatures. And yeah, I don't want to know, but that would be a good thing. You just take a swipe every morning, Lydia, and send it to me, and I'll grow it. and then probably I can identify all your ailments, and
I probably need a hazardous waste kit to mail it off to you. I'm looking up the Oaks Below Ground registration so I can put it in your chat.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I think we'll have some time for announcements at the end too. So if you're able to run through the goal teams. We'll give it just another minute to let folks join us. And if you haven't already put your name and your organization in the chat, please do so. The meeting's being recorded. You can keep yourself on mute until we get through the presentations, and then we'll have some Q&A and discussion time. So again, I'm Laura Riley, the coordinator of Chicago Wilderness. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim Anderson to facilitate the meeting.
Okay, many of you might have been expecting Patty Vitt this morning, and unfortunately she couldn't join us, so I'm stepping back into the old role of being sort of the goal team lead. And so today we want to just follow up on something that's become a rather significant issue that is just exponentially hitting the landscape. And so we're going to talk, in the work stream. I think you've all, if you've been involved with us before, we've got different sub goals that we're calling work streams. And one of those work streams was invasive species. And I'll be honest with you, one of our goals in thinking about this is to actually reactivate the Northeast Illinois Invasive Plant Program, which was called NIP for short. It's a cooperative weed management area. We'd like to get that reestablished because I think, I know that once it's reestablished, we can start tying into federal dollars and grants, and even pay for a coordinator. And so I think we're going to go through our talk today and then maybe come back to that subject at the end and see if anybody's out there that would be interested in participating in that process and moving it along. So what we do want to do today is, as I mentioned, I think we have enough people here. Maybe we'll just go around and introduce everybody. And so I'll read your name when I get there, and I hope I can handle everybody's name. I'm not very good with pronunciation, but I will work very hard to do that. So I'm Jim Anderson. I used to be the Director of Natural Resources for Lake County Forest Preserve. I retired in January. And now I am on the board for Citizens for Conservation, which is a local land trust in and around Barrington, Illinois. I also sit on the steering committee for the Chicago Wilderness. And so it's good to be here today and to listen to some of the discussions that we're having. So Patricia, do you want to introduce yourself?
I sure will. Thank you very much. I want to thank you for having me as part of your presentations today. Calorie Pair is what keeps me awake at night, and I'm happy to share with you about everything that I know about Calorie Pair. I'm going to share my screen if that sounds
Wait, Patricia. We're going to go around and introduce everybody.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm the site steward at Orlan Grassland Land and Water Reserve. We're 1,000 acres there. Also the site steward at Dewey-Helmick Illinois Nature Preserve, which is a grade A prairie. So that's who I am.
Okay, thanks. Catherine?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine. I just started working at the Field Museum. This is my second day, actually, as a conservation ecologist for the Chicago region. I came from St. Louis. I was working there for 5 years as a land manager doing ecological restoration in Forest Park, which is a very large urban park. And I managed about 70 acres of forest and savanna. So excited to be here.
Well, welcome. We are happy to have you.
Thank you.
Lydia?
Hi, I'm Lydia Scott. I'm Director of the Chicago Region Trees Initiative, and we're working to implement the Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan in the Chicago Wilderness area. And I put in the chat the link to the Oaks Below Ground workshop, which is on September 1st, for those of you that are interested in challenges with sudden oak death and some of those other problems. So thank you.
Geraldo? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I'm Gerardo. Is fine.
Gerardo, okay.
Good morning, everybody. I am with Open Lands. It's my second month here, so I'm new. I am their landscaping specialist, and we're working towards figuring out how to support the landscaping industry with more sustainable practices.
Great, welcome. Jeff?
I'm Jeff Mengler, senior ecologist with Hay & Associates. We're a member of corporate council.
Thanks, Jeff. Bob?
I'm Bob Fisher. I'm with the Bird Conservation Network, and that's a coalition of about 20 plus organizations within the region, essentially the Chicago Wilderness region. And most famously, I'm smiling hopefully as I say that, most famously right now, we're just released a 22-year-long study of the if you will, the breeding birds of the Chicago region. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Casey?
Hello, I'm Casey Sullivan, Argonne National Laboratory, and I'm the Natural Resources Manager here. We're 1,500 acres, about 2/3 of that is wild. And we work on invasive species control and biodiversity. Thank you.
Okay, Janice?
Good morning, everyone. Janice Hill from Kane County, and I manage the Farmland Protection Program.
Okay, good morning. Laura? Milkhart?
Morning, everybody. I'm Laura. I'm with the Field Museum as well, with Catherine, and I'm our Conservation Ecology Mentor. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Okay, now everybody's bounced around, so I will go back up. Pick Michelle, if you could just introduce yourself. Thanks for coming today. You're an important person.
Oh, well, I hope that proves to be true. Nice to be with all of you today. I'm the new, so the last name is Balasker. I know it's kind of a mouthful, but I'm the new coordinator for the Midwest Invasive Plant Network. I've been on board since the end of March. I am not actually in the Chicago area. We are technically housed at Wharton, but I'm working remotely. So I'm in the mid-Michigan area. I'm spending a lot of my time working on a project called Public Gardens as Sentinels Against Invasive Plants, as well as organizing the Upper Midwest Invasive Species Conference. So those are a couple things taking up a lot of my time. But again, glad to be with all of you today.
Great, welcome. Edward?
Hi, I'm Edward Wharton, Conservation Coordinator at Shedd Aquarium and board member of Chicago Ornithological Society.
Great. And so this is probably being the toughest one. It's Lee Lana. Okay, maybe.
Leilani, probably.
Oh, sorry,
Hey.
I wasn't unmuted. Hi. Yeah, Leilani. Good morning, everyone. My name is Leilani Kabzina. I am the Ecological Restoration Intern for the Village of Glenview, and I'm also currently a Climate Justice Fellow for Uplift, based out of the Southwest region. I'm really excited for today's meeting, and it's wonderful to meet you all.
Great. And then I think the last one is Cassie.
Sorry, I had to step out to take a call. If we're just doing intros, my name's Cassie Starr. I work for the Chicago Park District in our natural areas team.
Okay, great. So if you haven't already done this, could you put your name and affiliation in the chat box, please, so that we can keep track of who's here. And then today, you know, we're really going to focus on a really important invasive species, Calorie or Bradford pear. There's a lot of different names for it. We're going after, you know, we want to get rid of all of them. They are proven to be a very poor landscaping tree. You know, when it came on the market, it was supposed to be a godsend, and everybody really likes it because it's got nice white flowers. Well, that makes it very visible on the landscape in early spring, and anything that's white in early spring when you're driving down the road is probably Calorie pear. And so they're supposed to be sterile. They were not supposed to reproduce. They were all these wonderful things, and here we are today, and they have reproduced, and they are becoming an incredibly significant issue for many of the people managing lands. And we did not even plan for this or put money into it. You know, we just got through the process of gearing up and trying to control things like European buckthorn, purple loosestrife, garlic mustard, and then along comes this one, which is really a significant threat. So we have a couple of speakers today. One is a volunteer at Orlan Grasslands, and then we also want to hear from Bob Fisher and talk about the influence of Calorie pear upon bird populations. So I don't know, Laura, if we want to go through a quick review of the goal team. What was the second item on the agenda there?
It was a review of the goal team items.
Right.
So maybe we can do that at the end.
Okay, let's do that then. Let's let Patricia's going to share her screen and she's going to start. So I think she's going to talk about how Calorie pears is influencing their volunteer work area.
Okay, give me just a minute to switch this over. Let's see. I'm getting down to it. Here we are. Okay. Can you see this? Can you see my screen?
No.
Not yet.
All right, let me go back to Zoom. I thought I pressed share. Let's see.
Sometimes you might have to just click on the screen where the presentation is to bring it to the front when you.
Yeah, that's what I did. Let me go back here. Oh no, it's taking me back here. I hope I didn't log out of this thing. I might have logged out of the Zoom meeting.
No, because you're still here.
You're
Yeah,
still
you're
in,
here.
yeah.
Do you, is it a Google Drive
I'm
link?
getting all these ads from Zoom is what I'm getting, and I'm trying to get back to the, let's see if this is it. No, it's just giving me all these ads.
You can probably close those, and if for some reason. Do you have it on a Google, is it a link, or how are you showing the presentation from your hard drive?
I am showing it from my Google Drive. Let me just move this over and see.
If you'd like, you could share the link in the chat and I could run the slides if that's possible. And
Okay, let me try that. Well, I can't get to your chat. I can't get into the meeting is what's happening here. So I might just come back here and join your meeting again. No, that won't do it. It'll probably let me join the existing meeting.
so,
There you are. Okay.
you
I
are
see
in the meeting. You are in the meeting. It might just be
Right.
that there's additional tabs open.
Right. Can you see me?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm sorry, it's not.
No,
letting me
no
get-
worries. This happens all the
You know
time.
what? I'm gonna, can I forward the link to you?
Sure.
To your email address?
Sure.
And maybe you could put it up?
Yep, no
I've got
problem.
Jim's letter, hold on. Calorie pair, here's the link. I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna send it to you. All right, I'm sending it to you.
Okay. Got it.
All right, I'm back in the meeting. Okay, if you want to go to number 1.
I want to, hold on, let me.
So while she was doing that, let me just talk a little bit about this presentation before I do the presentation. You probably saw when she pulled it up that this presentation is annotated. One of the things that we were talking about before the meeting is that not only do I want to share this information with you, but also I want to encourage people to share this information within their networks, within their organizations, do all kinds of outreach. So this PowerPoint presentation is annotated for anybody who wants it. And there's also talking points and a blog page and media outlets and all sorts of things like that that can be helpful. So if anybody would like to just not reinvent the wheel or use this as a starting point, you are certainly welcome to use any of the things that, you know, we're talking about here that I have put together to help in that regard. So we already heard about the Calorie Pair Challenge, and a lot of you may know of it, and a lot of you may be living with it. Some may think, you know, what really is the big deal? I don't see it. And there's reasons for that. So we're going to talk about how did we get here? Why do we care? And what do we do now? Simple questions, but complicated answers. Next screen. So scientists, as we just talked about, scientists thought they had created the perfect tree. Adrian Higgins in 2019, it was in the Washington Post about why this was such a, you know, bad idea, why it became a nightmare. Next screen. The tree looks beautiful. It's tolerant of soil types, wetness variations. It's so symmetrical and pretty, earliest of the spring flowering trees with beautiful dense flowers. It turns a vibrant autumn color, the darling of the landscape industry. And it seemed to be the answer. It was a landscaper's dream. But next screen. We found out that it went from the focal point in your household landscaping design and the tree-lined parkways and driveways and streets. Next screen. To this, you can see this is all calorie pear. You can see from this car window, that is an infestation kind of in the background of calorie pear. I've never seen an invasive, and especially a tree. And I know autumn olive, I know aspen poplars, you know, I know all of those. I've never seen one so ferocious and invasive as this tree. Next screen. This is it in fall. A little complimentary teasel in this picture for you, but you can see the density that this forms so quickly. This is, when you look at this, this is not a very high canopy tree. These are immature trees at this stage, but look at the density that it has caused. Okay, next screen. So we know this post-war, it was a dream come true. 90s, it was suspected to be a problem. 2000s, it is a problem. So far that we know, and I think others have come on board, it has been banned in Delaware, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Oklahoma. Banning stops buying and selling, but we need to do more. Several states have already initiated a tree swap, and unless we do a tree swap or something of that nature, we are not going to defeat this tree. Just burning it, just cutting or top killing with herbicide isn't enough. It's a costly mistake, and it will take many years to remedy if we can't get it at the source. Next screen. So this is what we are faced with now. We have these viable seeds, which because of all the cultivars and all the hybrid and that we talked about earlier, they took a seedless tree and everybody had a good idea that they wanted to do the same thing. And the next thing we knew, there were various cultivars, many cultivars, and wouldn't you know, they produced viable seeds. They also have this rhizome of a root. So just like aspen poplars, the trees will pop up all along their root system, and it actually will create a web. Okay, next screen. So how I know about it is being the site steward at Orlan Grassland. It's 1,000 acres of open contiguous prairie, shrubland, oak savanna, wetlands. It's restored from an old ag field and reforestation to a grassland bird habitat in 2002. After a series of 3 clearings of reforestation and significant restoration activity, Calorie pear was discovered in May 2017. In March 2018, prior to the prescribed burn, volunteers lopped and herbicided about 20 acres. It was realized that there were tens of thousands of these trees. It also was recognized that these were not resprouts from earlier clearings. These were not in a seed bed from earlier trees, that these had just come in. We did a prescribed burn. It did not help. The contractors foliar sprayed a small area in mid-season, and I'm going to show you how that worked. Next screen. So Orlan Grassland Land and Water Reserve, this is a picture of our bike trail, and in between the bike trail or multi-purpose trail and LaGrange Road is this section that is new. And you can see the density of it already. Next screen. So after we discovered, this is Orlan Grassland, after we discovered that we had this problem, Audubon was able to get an ICF grant. They did the yellow patch first, which was about 60 acres. That would have been in about 2021. The white is their second. That would have been this spring, 2022. That's maybe 60 to 75 acres. And in the red line, this is all volunteers, Eagle Scouts, whatever efforts we could do on a community level. Each of these is an infestation. And where you see that little blue line, the little blue elongated section on the right-hand side, that's the picture that I showed you earlier. So that was cleared out, and within this time frame, that's what happened there. Next screen. So in March 15th, 2018, there was a prescribed burn. Next screen. These are our volunteers. I have to change my view here. I think this would be 18. I'm not sure. Everybody's faces are covering up my date, but I think this would be an 18. These are the Orlan Grassland volunteers. We are going after Calorie pear, and this is what it looks like in a very immature state. And you can see, even at this area, even at this stage, how dense this tree is beginning to populate this area. Next screen. This is what it looks like when it's budding. It has a reddish stem. You'll see others that have what appear to be spikes, thorns. These are actually branches that turn into, get stems and leaves on them. Next screen. Here it is budding out. You can see again, this area had been burned. The vegetation has been cleared out, and you can see what's left behind. Next screen. If you look at this closely, within the blue circle, you can see that this pear was top killed by the fire, but look at how it's sprouting beneath. Next screen. Here you can see that it was cut, it was herbicided, and it was burned, and we still are getting this resprout. Now, the problem I believe here is that our herbicide method was not correct, was not good. We were using one of those dabbers, and we dabbed the top of this with Garland 4. So it top killed this plant, and it was not able to draw the herbicide down into the root system. So we had to find a way that it would draw down into the root system. Next screen. Here you can see how easily disguised this is. Orlan grassland is, we've got a lot of Indian grass out there. We've got a lot of tall vegetation. So it can be not recognized right away. It's camouflaged easily by what's around it. And this is, in 2018. Okay, next screen. So this is an unburned area, and another example of the Calorie pear. It's on its own. We haven't treated it at all. Next screen. So how do we get rid of this? Well, we have to find a good way to get rid of it. And what has been successful for us is for those trees that are, say, over 8 feet tall, we do cut them because it's important with the grassland bird community landscape. It's important for us to get rid of that canopy. We found that in an area of prime Henslow sparrows that got an infestation of Calorie pear from, let's say, 2018 to 2020, maybe a period of 3 years, it went from being an Henslow sparrow area. We were finding orchard orioles in there, and the Henslows were gone. So it didn't take long for the Henslows to lose their habitat. Those we cut, got rid of the canopy, and herbicided them. The others that are, say, up to 8 feet tall, we basal bark them. And that way it will take the herbicide down into the roots. So getting them gone takes proactive restoration management, but it also takes education and collaboration, because as we talked about earlier, the problem is not only that it is within our conserved areas. It is all throughout our communities in so many areas. So a great deal of education has to occur within the public so that they can accept the fact that their favorite beautiful tree that's in their front yard or that they've got along their church line driveways and golf courses, they got to go. It's going to take collaboration. You know, the stewardship community, the agencies, the state, we all have to get together and go forward on this together. We need to offer a replacement with other shrubs and trees. There are others that we can put in there that, you know, would be a fine ornamental tree. It's all is not lost if you lose this beautiful tree. Next screen. So why do we care? I think we all know why we care. The open space of a grassland is particularly vulnerable. The prime breeding habitat for rare birds is quickly lost, as I can attest to. Healthy grasslands are very important to combat climate change. You know, they retain water, provide food and shelter, and we all know that. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit. Can you go to the next screen? Is this the tree? Okay, here's some media outlinks and examples. This Oklahoma promotional video is 1 minute and 43 seconds, and it tells the story. It goes from nothing to infestation in 1 minute and 43 seconds. So it's a very good thing. Missouri buyback plan, they've got a tree swap already there. So there's many ways where we can go into other people and not reinvent the wheel. Other state and media leaks are available at our website at orlangrassland.org. Also, you can go to WGN Radio. There's a podcast that I was on the Steve Dale show. It talks about it. But I want to just talk a minute about the perfect storm of this. The perfect storm is if you're already in the Chicagoland community, you're going to go, well, why is this such a big deal? And if you're in your home and your tree is out front, you're going to go, you know what? This tree doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. I planted it. I don't see why everybody's I don't have resprouts around the base. I don't have anything like that. Why is this such a big deal? Where we are getting clobbered is where you have old ag fields, farms that are being converted to planned unit developments, residential homes, new churches, new businesses. When you have that set up and you have a tree like this, which goes into every landscaping plan, and you have all of this openness that is right there, that is where major infestation occurs. So you're not going to see it on your block. You're not going to see it in the city. You're going to see it mainly Libertyville, Orlan Park, these suburban communities that sprang up in the 70s, 80s. People started using landscapers instead of, you know, like my mom did, went out somewhere and found a cottonwood and put it in the parkway, and that was her landscaping, you know. It was simple back then, but now it's more complex. When they brought this tree in for all the landscaping, and you have open spaces like you do next to these suburbs, the infestation is horrendous. So that is the extent of my PowerPoint presentation. As I said to you, you are all welcome to use it if you think that there is an outlet for it. Jim Anderson wrote a letter to the state. It was signed off by many of the Citizens for Conservation and the county forest preserves. But there are a lot of places that still need to perhaps help to spread our message. Chicago Audubon Society, perhaps BCN, Friends of the Forest Preserve, the Illinois Environmental Council, there's a Peggy Notabart, there's all kinds of places where this message could go so that we could get into the minds of the general public. And I think that's where we need to be. So thank you very much for having me. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Great. I would ask you to, I see a question, but I would like to just provide a quick update of what Pat was talking about. I did put together a request to the Illinois Invasive Species Council and got all of the local land management agencies to sign on, the Nature Conservancy, Open Lands, and I think Audubon Great Lakes was also a signature. And so we sent that to the Illinois Invasive Species Council and requested, we want to move this species onto the exotic species list. And so going through this process, I've learned what it would take to get it onto the exotic species list. And so that's not a quick process by any means. It has to be recommended by the Terrestrial Plant Committee of the Invasive Species Council. Then the Invasive Species Council has to review it. And then even more unfortunately, that particular process requires that it be passed by a state legislative action. So you would have to go through the bill process and get introduced to committee and get on the floor, go through Congress, go through the Senate. And so it's a long drawn out process. But speaking with the folks at the Illinois Invasive Species Council, they indicate that one of the things that they want to do is actually work to get the listing out of the the legislative process and move it to an administrative rule, which would be a quicker process. Now, my discussion with the person with the terrestrial plants has indicated that calorie pear is not going to be one of the first species they move through because it's too controversial, and that may have some good news to it, because if they can get it to the administrative rule, then it would be on their next cycle, and that could be a little faster process if it didn't have to get a legislative bill. I'm not going to discourage anybody on this page from saying, hey, we need to put political pressure and try to encourage them to include it. I think, this is not something new to the green industry, that this species is causing trouble in the natural areas, and it's not just natural lands, it's also probably, Janice, this is an interest to you, it's getting into agricultural fields where the crops aren't growing and growing up in the field edges, and it becomes very difficult for farmers to remove it because it's got thorns, and those thorns can puncture the tires of the tractor. And so it gets very hard for a farmer to go out there and mow. And so there is action to try to move this forward. And so we did send a letter to the Invasive Species Council. We sent it to Colleen Callahan of IDNR, and also, I forget his name, it's just on top of my head, but I can't remember, the Director of Agriculture. I did hear back from Colleen, and I did hear back from the Illinois Invasive Species Advisory Group, and so that's good news that they know. And the person I spoke to, Chris Evans, indicated thank you for letting us know this issue. And so I think, if there's a decision to move forward and say, hey, let's get rid of this, I think there is applying pressure. And as Laura was saying in the beginning, Chicago Wilderness is an organization that really doesn't take political actions, but we can help get the word out. So that's something that Chicago Wilderness is very willing to do. But because we have the Department of Agriculture and IDNR as partners, members, we probably just don't move forward that way. And Janice just put a really good comment in the chat. And yes, we can use a lot of different resources. The Soil and Water District, the Extension Service is also an option. And so with that, I just wanted to update you that we're I'm certainly aware of this species, and the last two springs, have just made me a really strong advocate of getting this off and trying to get rid of it, because it's just going to be, it is so exponentially disastrous that, nobody's going to have the ability to manage it, and it's going to take over way more than buckthorn. We thought buckthorn was bad. Calorie pear and Bradford pear is just really, really bad. So, Leilani, did you have your hand up earlier?
No, I was just clapping for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Bob. So Bob, do you want to just go into your presentation, or?
No, I actually, Jim, I actually have a suggestion, if you will. The Illinois Environmental Council is in the midst of their planning for seeking, let's say, legislative issues that they can recruit legislators on. I don't know how much or how little you've talked to IEC, or the group has talked to IEC, but I think this would be a very opportune time to, you might say, go for broke and see if there are some willing legislators to sponsor a bill which would essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, make it illegal to sell the pear in Illinois, something along those lines, and work with the Department of Agriculture, because you're talking about an impact on the farming community. So again, this is all out of ignorance of what has happened, but it strikes me that it might be more effective to talk to the IEC about actual legislation, pretty directly addressing the continued sale or availability of the plant.
So Bob, I agree with you, and I think I think what I hear coming back from the person that I talk with, the Illinois Invasive Species Council, is that the real thrust should be to get it out of a legislative process, so we don't have to get a state senator or state rep to walk this through, and get it so that the council itself can do the administrative rule. And I think that's going to speed up the process by years, because a bill walking through our state legislature takes a long time. So I just think talking to IEC it's a good option. I'm going to be talking to somebody that I know that has a lot of connections in Springfield, and getting his opinion. So I'm not giving up on my effort to keep this moving forward. And so I think we need to strategize about how we want to move forward. We can bash them and say, hey, put this on the list, hey, put this on the list. But I think there is an effort, and the council itself is in agreement with this idea of doing an administrative rule. And so if we can support them doing that, I think that is probably the quickest way to move Calorie pear to the exotic species list. And then Casey just put in there that, the nurseries still have the stock, and they're probably going to be allowed to sell their stock. That's a typical way that anything goes off the market. But I also think, Lydia Scott and her efforts with the green industry, I know Lydia has been telling them that this is going to be coming. And I don't know if you want to say anything, Lydia. I just saw you unmute yourself, but if you want to add something about that process, which I think is getting some movement.
I think there's good support from the Illinois Green Industry Association to move forward with this. This is something they've been aware of for some time. And Kelly Schmidt, who's the executive director of IGIA, is actually a co-chair on the Terrestrial Plant Invasive Species Committee. She's the one that sent notice to the Illinois Invasive Species Council that it is their recommendation that the process for reviewing and processing these requests be expedited to reduce the legislative requirements. So they're on board with this. I think it's just a matter of going through the process, and I think it's set on the agenda for the next Illinois Invasive Species Council meeting. So I think it's a very positive development.
And And Lydia, do you know when that next meeting is?
It's September, but I don't know the date. It should say it on the website,
Okay.
on the Illinois Invasive Species website, but we can get that from the executive director or the president of the council board.
Okay, so then, any other questions that anybody might have, or comments or ideas, concerns? Going once, twice, three times. Okay, so then I would, what we want to do now is hear from Bob Fisher about what he's seen in the bird community and the influence of, you know, one of the ways this plant moves around, and if anybody has, I used to have one outside my office door. That's a bad thing to say. I work for a forest preserve and we have Calorie pear planted around our building. But there is just every bird species you can imagine loves the fruit, and they eat it and they fly away. And when they do that, they are spreading that species everywhere. So Bob, do you want to make a quick presentation? Well, you know, we got time. I didn't mean to say quick, but make a presentation about the birds.
Sure. I was a little bit unprepared here, so I'll just say that based on the BCN, Laura, can you bring up, go to the Bird Conservation Network webpage and bring up Trends 21, /Trends 21, bcnbirds.org. /Trends 21 and share that screen. I should have asked you this sooner, but I have it on my screen, but I'm not sure I can screen share right at the moment. Yeah, scroll down to the Grassland Birds, if you would. Shrubland and Grassland. You go back to Shrubland for a minute. I think hopefully everybody in this group knows that shrublands are ephemeral in nature in our natural areas. They tend to become woodlands or grasslands depending on the changes to the weather patterns, habitat, et cetera, et cetera. A large variety of birds use, our breeding birds use grassland and shrubland habitat. The biggest tension zone is very often the invasion of shrubland into grassland. And I guess it's fair to say that the pear is the poster child for an invasive species which can take over a grassland and eliminate habitat. As it was mentioned earlier, some of the grassland species will simply move out or not even attempt to live there and raise their young there once shrub density is too heavy. And since the pear is such a quick mover, that can happen very quickly. Our 22 years worth of data on the various habitat types, one of the interesting questions that this is raising is, can we look at specific locations where, particularly in recent years, where the invasion of heavy invasion by shrubs into grasslands, has that impacted the grassland species? Sure, the answer is yes. But are the shrubland birds adapting to use the Bradford pear shrublands? I don't think we know the answer to that. And I'm not arguing for that, by the way. I'm not suggesting that we should say, oh, it's a benefit to one group of birds, even though I hate to say disaster, it's a bad thing for grassland birds in general. So in short, we've got two groups of species that are affected, and we don't know. We have a lot of data about how they're doing generally, but we really can't say or point at right at the moment how some of these changes in habitat due to the pear, or for that matter, due to buckthorn or whatever, that we can't say we know that that this is the effect on bird populations, both population density, species density, and are these trends focused on, I guess I'll say we're not fine-tuned enough to answer that question right now, but it does suggest the idea that, coincident with trying to eliminate, reduce infestation by invasive shrubs, that we can monitor and find out over time whether that's working in terms of the both the density of use and the species mix that's using the habitat. Shrublands are, I'm going to say, as you can see, there's a large variety of species that use shrubland birds in our natural areas. I guess it's simplest to say that once the pear invades, for example, it's really no longer a natural area. It's an overgrown or unnatural area. And there might be a few birds that use it, but the species diversity is much reduced. But that's an opinion right at the moment, not or a hypothesis. It's not a certainty. So I would happily answer any questions that I might know the answer to. But the simple fact is we need more information. If we're going to view the birds as good indicators of good management, maybe we can do that with this specific two subsets of birds, and perhaps even looking into the recent past, we may have some example shrublands, Orlan being one of them, where we can pull out the population data and the species diversity data and say, here is the cause, here is the effect. So I would welcome questions.
Thank you, Bob. I don't know if you want me to pull up that slide of the MMN that you sent me.
That's a totally different issue. If we want to focus on, I'll leave it up to you.
Oh yeah,
guys.
let's stay here for now.
Minutes we can talk about it, but fundamentally, I am, one of the things I thought I would do is, for example, reach out to Pat after this meeting is over and talk about, can we assess at that specific site, do we have enough data to be able to say this was what happened as the pair invaded? So
can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. So what I'd like to offer here is a couple things. Number one, since and I hope you appreciate the time frame that presentation was made, 2018 to 2022, that's 4 short years, of what I showed you was happening at Orlan. And additionally, it has consumed our volunteer stewardship activities. We don't collect seed. We don't go after bird's foot trefoil. We just did a white sweet clover sweep, but generally speaking, Calorie pear, we are trying as hard and fast as we can and getting all help that we can. And, it's overwhelming. And it has reduced the other things that we would do on our 1,000 acres. The other thing I want to add to you is that we have done, Orlan Grassland volunteers over 10 years, did a 1-day camera shot of all the birds. We monitored all the birds in all the areas. Orland is wetland, shrubland, woodland, prairie, BCN typically monitors, and they are looking for specific points over a short period of time. We wanted to know what all was everywhere on our site, and we did that for 10 years. The last year being 2015, and then we did it again this past year in 2022. One of the things that we noticed is that Shrubland Birds took a bigger part of the pie than Grassland Birds in our 2022 data collection. It was a surprise to us. But then we also know that shrubs have been flourishing, encroaching into the prairie as shrubs want to do. Not the, and they're, you know, they're not the shrubs we want, you know, they're the honeysuckle, especially honeysuckle, autumn olive, and all of that. Additionally, at the same time, we have Calorie pear. So it would be hard to take out the impact of Calorie pear when you also have this other shrub action going on that is encroaching into the prairie. Our site was divided into 10 sections. Each section, most sections, contain, you know, a little bit of each, a pond and a little wetland and prairie, tiny bit of woodland. So even that in itself, I don't know that it's going to be able to be the kind of analysis that you're looking for. Does that make any sense?
Well, I would just say maybe what you just described, Pat, is what you might say what we need to know. Shrubland birds are opportunists. They'll go, they adapt. They come back to an area where they've nested before. But if that area has been, let's say, cleared of shrubs, they'll go find another area where they can nest. They're more, probably as a group, more adaptable to less committed to a specific location. You know, many breeding birds return to the same location, but shrubland birds seem to be more adaptable, and so they may be kind of what you just said. They may be accommodating themselves to the change in the habitat mix that the site is experiencing. But I'll go back to the pear again and say, maybe going forward, there are some experiments that we might consider that would allow you to pinpoint whether the shrubland birds are not using the Calorie pear infestations. I don't know that. I'm just speculating that that it would be good to know.
Right.
So.
And in very rare instance, although the infestation has been thick, as you saw, the infestation is not mature, so that it's not 10, 20 years old. This infestation is 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. So it's still going to have a lower canopy stature, if that makes any sense.
So Pat, I'd like to make a suggestion, and I don't know if this is something that could work, but it sounds like one of the things that we may want to be thinking about, going through the invasive species council is a great thing to do. We should pressure them. We should figure out what's the best way to do that. But maybe, I think many of the people working at Bartell Grasslands are neighbors, and maybe there's a way to invite the local community, planners in to, a work day out there to talk about Calorie pear and try to encourage them to think about, well, maybe the community will support Bartell Grasslands by, I don't know which community it's in, but would they be willing to, them run the tree, if someone takes down a tree, then they get a new tree. And,
right.
And so that sort of gets the trees, that are not on the grassland out of the landscape it makes your job a little easier. Now, it's not going to resolve it completely, but the more that we can try to attack this, and so that's another option that I think a lot of people should be thinking about is there a way that you can talk to your community, or is there a way that we can talk to communities? I know they meet all the time. I know Lydia Scott has been doing a great job trying to reach out to people, and I think we just need to do more of it. You know, Libertyville is a very good example. Those trees look like crap right now. Half of them are dying, they're splitting, they actually do not smell nice in the spring. They don't look really gorgeous now because they're all dead branched, and they're very dirty species. The berries get everywhere, and they lose their limbs, and so there's a lot of bad things to do. But we need to figure out how we can get this word out to communities and see if, because a lot of communities do provide street trees and things like that. And so I don't know how we get into that. Maybe Lydia has a suggestion, but I think we got to start thinking also local on how we can influence the population and try to really make an effort to. We're going to have to take several fronts. Going to IEC is a great suggestion, Bob. But I think working with local communities, if you're in the community and thinking about that, the forest preserves could also be thinking about doing that and trying to encourage people, communities to do that. I think Lydia is unmuted, and she's talking about tree ordinances and things like that.
Yeah, and there was just recently legislation that enables communities to with respect to buckthorn, and regulations there encouraging landowners to remove buckthorn. So there is some interest there. We, at the Arboretum, we have a species list that we recommend. And at the beginning of the species list, we state very clearly species that should be avoided or not planted, including Calorie pear, Norway maple, and some others that are more traditionally on the market, winged euonymus, barberry, which are shrubs. But I think using some of those, and I think Chicago Botanic Garden had phased out the recommendation for planting Calorie pear. So they're probably by now in the stage where they're directly telling people that it's a bad thing to plant as well. So there are resources available. We work pretty actively with communities, and right now we have several grants that are available. One that will be coming up in the next few weeks that enables communities to plant trees. And so if they wanted to take action to remove Calorie pear at that time and replace them via the grant, that would be an opportunity that they could take advantage of them as well. We're just waiting for the agreement to be signed with the U.S. Forest Service so we can move that forward.
I will say that I have gone to a board meeting for the Village of Orlan Park. The mayor agreed he hates Calorie pear. The Forest Preserve District of Cook County, John McCabe has, I think informally, casually, because he knows the mayor, reinforced the idea that, Calorie pear is bad. The articles have been in the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times. So there's a lot of information that is going out to the public. But I think that it's going to take a more concerted effort on follow-up, follow-through, follow-up, follow-through to actually move the needle. Everybody agrees it's bad. Everybody agrees, okay, we need to do something. And so here we are, kind of paused, but I don't see anybody actually chopping down their trees. So until we can get that message into the heads of a lot of people where they actually will take the action to take out the tree, it can be in the paper all over, but I think we're at the next stage.
Okay. So, one of the ways to, I think, to approach this species and many other, I was talking to Lydia about putting that letter together to inform the council that it's become a major issue for land management. You know, if you're thinking just about Orlando grassland, Rebecca's sitting there thinking about the 70,000 acres that she's got to manage. And so, you know, that becomes a really, you know, it's not a planned for item in the budget. You know, we've got, you know, I think almost every district has got money to address invasive species, but at the level that Calorie Pear is coming along, it is just tremendous. And so, and we're going to be likely having new species or old species come up that are certainly important to control. And I also think we have to think about the other side of the question, because I think it's really important that we reach out to the landscaping communities and landscapers, because we want to inform them that things are bad. And so I will just introduce it real quick, and then I'll get to Rebecca. I think going back to this cooperative weed management area really will help us get dollars and force and power to reach out to other people. And so I'm going to take Rebecca's comment really quick, and then we'll come back to that discussion. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thanks. I was just going to agree with Pat. I mean, I think there's a lot of information about how bad the species is, and there have been instances where the forest preserves has been approached by you know, specific municipalities about, is this a good species to plant adjacent to a preserve? But given the number of different municipalities and landowners that abut our forest preserves, I think I'm very encouraged by the idea of a statewide action, because I think that will get to, you know, all the actors that we might interact with at once. So I was very encouraged, Jim, when you were saying there's action about possibly putting the species on the invasive species list for the state. And I think that administrative rule process, you know, would be beneficial not only for Calorie Pear, but the next invasive that comes up. There's a way to add species more easily, so that, you know, step one is they're not for sale. And then step two maybe is like what Pat was saying, how do we replace the ones that are already on the landscape? So if there's efforts to, you know, I don't know, apply pressure for that process, I think, you know, with the forest preserve, we would be supportive of that.
Okay. So I'm going to throw in the chat here real quick, and if you can go to the link and open this link, or Laura, if you can open this link and maybe share it on the screen. So this was the former cooperative weed management area in Chicago region. It had a lot of strength. It had a coordinator, and you can see that Medewan and Botanical Garden were part of it. Yeah, if you could scroll down a little bit, this is just introducing how it got started. And so, you know, you can see not too long ago, well, here's a really important slide that says 2010, Chicago Wilderness received $96,000 to do invasive species in the Lake Michigan watershed. So that is, I'm sorry, that was to hire a coordinator. So there's really good opportunities here. If we could scroll a little further along, Laura, you can see at the time, this is Chicago Wilderness. We've got 254 partners. We could scroll down a little bit more. So we were looking at 18 counties in northeastern Illinois, and more than 60 potential partners in completely different fields. And you can see some of the species like Japanese stiltgrass has recently been found in the Chicago area. This species, I've seen it in southern Illinois, and it just takes over the forest floor. It wipes out everything. Flowering rush is another one that's there. And so if we scroll down a little bit more, you know, when this program was up and running, we were trying to do invasive plant education. We had Catherine McGlynn as the coordinator, and she was doing a lot of programs. We also start this early detection and rapid response where you can actually log into something and say, hey, here's a kudzu vine coming in from the south. And so these opportunities were, you know, they were up and running, and so if we go forward, you know, we were coordinating mapping, and so we've got some small projects on the ground. We're doing some training. They actually started reaching out to transportation corridors and their maintenance crews, and we were getting them money to get trained. And so there's a lot of great efforts that could come out of this cooperative weed management area. And you know, we're doing some, it had some research, it had education. You know, we were tying up with some of the aquatic species, and that was reaching out. As Lydia's carried on, we had a green industry education and outreach. We actually had an Illinois Species Awareness Month. And so all of this was there, and we lost our coordinator, and we kind of lost everything else. So all we need now is to reestablish this organization, and it has the ability to have this Chicagoland strike team. So essentially, this would be a group of people that would go to different areas and spend a day or two, and you know, be like 20 people strong with all the proper equipment, and just go after a site and try to eradicate something that was there. You know, we're talking about mapping. You know, right now we have, if you're not familiar, the Chicago Wilderness, working through the Field Museum, has the Chicago Hub, Chicago Wilderness Hub page. This could easily be added to the hub page, this online target species distribution map. Where are these species, and what are they doing? Certainly training is a thing for park districts and everybody else that we think is important. And you know, as we were scrolling through here, you keep seeing spotted knapweed and other species. And so one way was this new invaders watch program, where we can actually log these down, and someone would report a population of these things. And so there was 23 different species we were watching. And so, you know, and this has all gone to the wayside because, you know, I understand the pandemic hit. We've lost people in the industry, in the business. We've lost people, you know, manpower. But I don't think this is not all that difficult to re-engage people and to reestablish this. So I would, you know, I'm putting out a call today to really think about, you know, those that can go back to your agency and say, hey, what can we do? You know, even, you know, right now, what we need to do is just, we need someone to house this person. And so we also need someone to be the physical agent for a grant that we would probably write to get money for the coordinator. So it's not like this program is going to cost you if you're going to be the person, you know, hosting the coordinator. And then the coordinator just starts working within this goal 1 of managing landscapes, and starts to focus on all the items that we've put under the work stream for invasive species. So, you know, this is one of them. And if you want to keep scrolling through, this is all about the Invaders Watch program. And you can see here was an article about giant hogweed coming into the area. And so we immediately responded to it and got rid of it in Lake Forest. So that's the kind of action that we can take and have. And, you know, I don't know why this one didn't pick up on Calorie repair so quickly, but it didn't. So if we could scroll a little through, see if there's something else besides the invasive, yeah, keep going. This is all specific species. So you know, here it was. We had a coordinator. She was at the botanical garden, and so I I'm open for any suggestions about this. You can stop sharing, Laura. I appreciate that. So I think this is also a good way to not only be thinking about calorie pair, which is for, in right out front right now as a very, probably the #1 species that we want to address. But we also want to make sure that we don't lose sight that there, as Lydia mentioned, there's other species that we want to be capturing. And so, with that, I'm open to anybody's comments about that process. Is everybody supportive? Could I maybe just get you to raise your hand and say, yes, I'm supportive? I'll just do like that. And so if, I think this is a very important concept. And I know Patty, as the chair of this goal, is going to be working on that. And I think it's really important that we get this going, because I think once it gets going, then it brings money to us, it brings focus, and we can be more effective, I think, at reaching people like us with what's happening, and then also reaching people to everybody else about what we're doing. So Jeff, do you have a question, or are you just still raising your hand?
Well, I'm still raising my hand in support, but obviously we talked about this on some previous calls. And I was the vice chair of that prior effort with NIP. And so I think, you described well, how we can go about trying to get it off the ground and the benefits the organization was providing. I guess I would just add that I think a key piece is to sort of reconvene a volunteer board, that would function as a board or a steering committee or whatever for the CWMA, and let them start to work on it. And then the reason it ceased operations was because we lost our fiscal agent and our staff, the coordinator, and we're never able to find another organization to do that. And that was really the biggest hurdle. But we need somebody that can champion it. I'm happy to help, but as I indicated before, I don't think I have the bandwidth to be the leader of the group, but I can certainly assist and participate on that committee or board or whatever we want to call it to try to get that going.
So Jeff, I know you were on there and Debbie was on there. Do you know who else was on there? Can you remember?
Yeah, and I can look that up, but it included people like John Legge from TNC. We had somebody from Sea Grant, Kurt Dreisilker from the Arboretum. And yeah, I could find the list of who.
Yeah, I can look it up too. I can go back and look. Okay.
And as you mentioned, we were trying to reach out to sort of non-traditional partners that are going to be key to this, the transportation corridors and all of that stuff. And the other thing I just wanted to mention specifically on the calorie pair, I have a friend who's also a client, and he purchased an old tree nursery property in Kane County. And he wants to ultimately build a house on it and then restore everything around it in some sort of an ecological restoration. But it was an old tree nursery, and it's pretty much totally infested with calorie pair. And so he's been machine clearing it, with a skid steer forestry mower. And what I was thinking about is if there are particular bits of information, data that we could be gathering as we restore his property that might be informative to others' efforts to control calorie pair. Maybe if folks could think about that and let me know, I could approach him with, are there things that we could just voluntarily collect data on his property to see how it goes. So far, it looks like when you shatter the stems with the forestry mower, they don't resprout so much. At least they haven't in the first year. It's about an 80-acre property, and he's probably cleared a third of it so far.
So Pat, I'll get to you in a minute, and Rebecca, I see you. But Pat, you said you were cutting it and treating it with Garland?
Yeah, we cut it about, I want to say maybe 12 inches high. That's what we do now. so that we cut it, but then we also basil bark it. So we cut and then basil bark it. Because of the density of the infestation, I'm eager to get it to be stems and not canopied.
Right.
When
So
it's a smaller, but if you just top kill it, and I'm surprised to hear this about the cutting, because I'm surprised that the lateral roots don't pop something up. After that
You're
cut.
herbiciding it, right?
Yes, we herbicide it, and then we
Jeff,
try
you're
to follow
herbiciding
up
too,
with a
right?
burn afterwards to get any very immature sprouts, to have the fire impact that. But we have found that first we herbicide it, and then we want to follow up with a fire.
He's not herbiciding yet when he cuts it with the forestry mower. I'd warned him that he may well have to, but so far, and he's just keeping an eye. It may be that it hasn't been enough time yet, and that we will see that because of how rhizomatous it is. I don't know, but if you've used the forestry mower, you know how they shatter that stem, and sometimes that is enough to knock down the stump sprouting.
Right, but when you top kill, you kind of take that stem down to nothing too, and you can see how it resprouted around the base of the plant. And you can see how with the thickness, the rhizome of the root, I don't know, you just encourage that thing to produce more or whatever. It is, I would be very interested in your observation the next growing season.
Right, I agree.
Great. Rebecca?
Hi, everyone. I was just going to add, I was part of the NIP steering committee when that was around in my previous position with the Field Museum. I guess that was maybe like 8 or so years ago now. I know one limitation we had with the organization at the time was just the, I can't remember what they call it, but like the overhead for having the Chicago Botanic Garden as the fiscal agent. So if there is energy of getting that started again, maybe looking for an entity with lower overhead might be more beneficial, because then more of the money could go directly to the program. And I think that was ultimately why they decided it wasn't a good fit, just because of the overhead they had to have. So if there's any people who work for NGOs out there that might be willing to host it, that could be a good first step.
Right. I have had a discussion with Ed Collins and Elizabeth Kessler with McHenry County Conservation District. And at the time that we were trying to get it, I don't know what made it drop off well, we were trying to get an application into the grant program to get funding for the coordinator, and we just couldn't get it done by the time the grant was due. As you know, grants come out of nowhere, and next thing you know, it's due next week. And so I think McHenry County might be willing to do that, and they wouldn't charge that overhead. They've indicated that would be something. So I think we might have a fiscal agent to lead that effort. And so then it's really more about the capacity to research where we can get some funding, and or Rebecca, you could go back. I know money's tight everywhere, but do the land management agencies and other NGOs possibly have, can we make it a due paying thing, that would help with it? But unfortunately, the dues would probably be so substantial to pay for a coordinator, because you're probably going to need $100 grand. But so that means maybe 10 agencies giving $1,500 or more, to try to keep it going. But so I think it's something that we want to put on a radar, and from this goal of managing landscapes, there's no sense in saving natural areas if we can't get rid of the calorie pear. I'm kind of sold on that fact. It's going into areas that are high quality, and it's not even blinking. You know, Middle Fork Savannah is a very good example. It is, you know, just starting to march over that facility, and you know, most of our, you know, as Pat showed, Orlan grasslands, everybody living around it is residential and or commercial and or, you know, industrial, and these are the trees that they've been planting. And so it's going to be a long battle, but we do need to figure out how to get it off the market and then get it off the landscape. And those are two big things. And I think from this work stream, this is probably one of the most important things that would come up as a priority. And actually, I would encourage, you know, when I get a chance to talk to Patty, follow up on this meeting, would actually say that I would forward this forward to the Chicago Wilderness Steering Committee as a priority project of establishing this weed management area, going after calorie repair to get it on the exotic species list, and then figuring out a means and methods to get it off the landscape. Because and you know, that's a big challenge, and it's not going to happen overnight. And so you know, we're going to need everybody to jump on board and participate and be, you know, be part of the answer. And so I think, Rebecca, are you still willing to think about serving on the committee to oversee okay, great, thanks. So I may reach out to you folks and find out who that initial list was. I may send you an email and say, who else should be on that list? You know, I think it was a lot of agency people, and maybe we should really be trying to get some other folks, volunteer stewardship work groups, you know, along those lines, and see who helped. You know, Gerardo, I don't know if you're interested, and you know, this is certainly something that Open Lands might be interested in participating in. And so, you know, I'll just be very honest with you. You know, Jeff and I are kind of, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm stepping out of the landscape and doing some other things, but I do think we need young people to step up and say, hey, this is important, and we want to be part of it, and we want to figure it out. And there's the whole you know, education outreach part that is very, very important, that, you know, we start telling people that this is a bad thing. Don't buy it, you know, because that's another way to stop it from getting on the market, is don't buy it. You're going to regret this in 10 years. You're going to be replacing it. It's not what it's meant. You know, it's not the tree that it's been thought of. And you know, when you hear something that's too good to be true, guess what?
It is.
Yeah.
One other person I just thought of that was involved, I think the whole time, was Trish Bechtard, when she was still with Midwest Ground Covers. Now she's moved away from the area, but she was our link to the, you know, sort of the nursery trade industry. And we would for sure want to make sure that we got someone else to be that link. And, you know, I know other folks at Midwest Ground Covers that we could reach out to, or maybe other folks have other ideas along those lines. But, you know, we were trying to have those different aspects, different organizations represented, not just the usual restoration land management agencies.
Yeah, so Lydia would be a good source to think about.
Yeah.
Those. She mentioned Kelly Schmidt from the Illinois Green Industry. You know, that's a good person to have on there. And I don't want to duplicate. Well, if she's from Central Illinois, maybe she's not going to be the right person. But you know, there are people here. There's landscaping associations that certify things. There's a lot of things that you know, we can reach out to. But I may reach out to that original group and try to encourage you to maybe think about leading this effort. If we can, you know, reconfirm with Ed Collins and Elizabeth that they would host it, then I think it's just talking to Lydia to find out when we can, you know, where are the funding sources to hire a coordinator, and get that coordinator. You know, unfortunately, situating them out in McHenry County is not perfect for everybody, but you know, in today's world, you can be anywhere and do anything. So Bob, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question out of ignorance. Has anything recently, has there been any recent outreach to the garden clubs of Illinois, the local, there are many local chapters of the GCI here in the Chicago area. And I think the garden clubs as a group are a good resource on two levels. One, there's, Lydia may hopefully agree with this, but I get the sense that the garden clubs are becoming more, shall we say, native plant oriented. So they might be another good resource to get public outcry, talk to nurseries and so forth about eliminating that as a plant in their inventory. I put that in the chat also. I just wanted to say, I don't have any sense of whether they're involved in this discussion at all.
Yeah, we do have to go outside and think of non-traditional partners and how we can bring them into the picture. But I understand that this is like, oh boy, this is a task, another thing on my list to do. But I really think this has value added character to it. Once we get it up and established, it's really going to help us in the long run with invasive species in the region. And I'm going to be honest with you, teasel and wild parsnip and all sorts of species. Poison hemlock is just becoming, it's growing everywhere. And so, I think we need to not only state that we have problematic species, but it's also, we need to be thinking about, well, if we're really going to attack these things, one, we need to work with the utility corridors and transportation corridors, because that's a means a lot of things spread by. But also, we need to internally think, we got to increase our capacity to be able to manage these species. Rebecca, you're probably sitting there going, which one do I do first? And where do I start working first? And so, and if you don't pay attention to one spot, then it gets so, infested that it just becomes well, we're going to let that site go. And I just think, we've got to think around that and try to really express the issue that, we need attention for this particular thing. And this is, when I left Lake County, the executive director asked me what I thought would be big things coming up on the landscape as far as restoration ecology. And I said, top number one by any means is invasive species. They're just becoming so dominant and spend so much time. And, and it's both in the beginning restoration phases and also in long-term management phases.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to hold up my hand.
You just did.
So I want to maybe throw another element into the toolbox. That's a very common thing now to call it a toolbox, isn't it? But another element might be it's important to get it out into the community, as you've said. But when you actually take your show on the road and you're getting out into the community and you're making library presentations and you're going to the garden club and you want to go to the Sierra Club in your area or any of these places where they are gatekeepers and they can then relay this information to their next door neighbors, all of that sort of thing. That's a lot. That's a big job. And I wonder if there could be something, I don't know if this is from my old days and you don't know what this is, but there was a Toastmasters program that trained individuals to be public speakers and how to take a message and confidently speak in front of people. It was not something that was a particular organization. It was like I don't know, just a national organization of Toastmasters. But I wonder if there is some way that you can develop a team of people who could do that, who would be willing to do that, who would like to be the public speaking arm of this to get down into the grassroots, who are the voters, you know, ultimately, who have the public opinion that we need. I'm just throwing it out there.
That's a great idea, Pat. And I think in the cooperative weed management program, Catherine McGlynn was actually doing that and was encouraging. Not only was she giving programs, but she was enlightening people about it and telling people, you know, how you should implement the new invaders and all those things. So we are at our time limit. I'm open for another question or any comments that you have. You know, one of the other ways to do it is that Chicago Wilderness has cafes, but that's typically preaching to the choir, and we're really talking about trying to do outreach to those other people. And so I want to thank everybody for being here today. Thanks, Pat and Bob, for speaking. Welcome to all the new faces. It's great to see you. I love it. And go enjoy the rest of the day and have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Hey, Laura, can you copy the chat and send that to me, please?
Sure, no problem. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Laura, you're still on. I just felt like it wasn't really appropriate to leave that central subject. So
That's fine. No problem, Bob. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah, no problem.
yeah,
I appreciate your presentation, and I think it all went well. So
yeah, well, it just you know, from my perspective, hearing about that, it strikes me that what Jim's talking about, if it's doable, should be done.
yeah, right.
Very interesting. So thanks for having me. And I'm going to talk to Pat privately about the any cooperative effort to interpret bird behavior with invasive species. That's one of the questions that's on the table, actually. So
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Have a good day, and thanks again.
Thank you. You too. I really appreciate your flexibility on the fly. Very much.
Well, that MMN thing, maybe even after that's over, it might not hurt to have we might want to consider a cafe about that after all of the presentation. You know, there are 4 separate presentations, 4 separate themes, but that might be worth a cafe sometime in early fall, because I think there'll be a lot of people interested in some of the data and some of the information. So we'll see.